Welcome to Writers Room Retcon, where you'll find us on the channel that we've just named, Screen Block. So hopefully you're subscribing, and there will be some other videos to come. This one, Writers Room Retcon, we do is we take a franchise that exists and we look to see what we would do with it. Can we do it any better? Giving ourselves 1 hour to write a new film for the new franchise.
Seems it's Halloween, Mike. What film do you want to look at?
Well, we said in our last video, and as we're going to do on this one, 28 days. So obviously you had 28 days later, 28 weeks later, so it makes sense to now go for 28 months later. Can we do any better? Can we continue the franchise, or is it dead disco?
Let's to the table and figure out what the hell we're going to do with this thing.
Did a weird turn there as I was going round.
Good. Your new microphones, Mike.
Exactly, new microphones. So hopefully you can hear us better.
Yeah, I think already. There we go.
There.
Happy?
Happy.
Professional.
Professional.
That's pointing right at your gob. That looks like it's my gob.
Perfect.
Cool.
So
28 days, weeks. Let's
yes.
Let's see where we're at with the franchise, right?
Indeed. So obviously the first film, 28 days later.
Get my bits together here. So yeah, like we got 28 days, which came out. Oh my God! Right. So 28 days later. This was 2002. What did you think of 28 Days Later?
I loved 28 Days Later. Absolutely adored it. It obviously was... saying low budget's not fair, because it probably wasn't massively low budget, but it definitely was, I think, an underfunded, perhaps unexpected hit. I personally love the film, but it's really interesting because obviously Danny Boyle's done brilliant things beforehand, but I feel like this was another film that cemented him. Cillian Murphy, the lead, like this was his big star, and then obviously he's gone on to do Peaky Blinders and star in a bunch of Christopher Nolan films.
Yep.
And the inspiration behind 28 Days Later is obviously what led to the creation of The Walking Dead, the comic book series, which was then reflected
I didn't realize
in
how
the TV series.
It was one to the other like that.
I mean... The Walking Dead came out after, so whether they acknowledge the direct reference, it's obviously clearly there.
It definitely kick-started. It was part of that new wave of zombie films.
100%.
And the fast zombies.
Yes, which was particularly excellent. So yeah,
shocking.
I'm a massive fan of 28 Days Later. I thought it was great.
Yep.
I think it might also have been, and I'm probably going to be corrected wrong, but I think it may also have been the first film Secret Cinema did as well. As one of their
that's a good one.
Yeah, one of their experiences. So, yeah, 28 Days Later, I think had a bit of a cult following to start with, and then kind of blew up massive in the old rental department.
Makes sense. We got 28 months later was next.
Yes, all right, 28 weeks.
Shit.
Yep.
Where's the cough gone?
Just
over here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just so excited to get onto what we're talking about.
Yeah. So then you had 28 weeks.
Stick with me, kid. Weeks. 28 minutes later.
Yeah.
And there was 28 seconds later. Yeah, so 28 weeks. So this was 2007.
So Solid Crew's lesser known hit.
Juan Carlos Fresnadillo.
Yep, him.
Yeah.
Yep. Apologies.
No, yeah,
for our horrendous British interpretation.
Yeah, I can't help it. What did you think of 28 weeks?
It's very... Overall, it's not bad. It's not as groundbreaking and as gripping as 28 Days Later. I have to say, though, as a film, the opening of 28 Weeks Later is phenomenal. And I was thinking about this. It may be one of my favourite horror openings, especially in the zombie. And that's saying quite a lot when you've got all of George Romero's and all of the other work that Zack Snyder's.
It's very cool the way it unfolds.
100%. it kind of gets a bit bogged down, but it gives you more, I suppose, of what you want. It's obvious that the budget for 28 Weeks Later was a lot higher, so it kind of gives you that much grander scale. I think the mistake they made is 28 Weeks Later came out so long after 28 Days that already there were load more zombie stuff around, so then it kind of feels a little bit oversaturated.
This was like almost that wave of zombie stuff was like, it was almost done by this point.
Exactly. And so I can understand, zombies are popular, let's do a sequel to 28 Days Later. But I feel like it then kind of lost out a bit. If it had come out a couple of years later, it might have maybe. But overall, a decent film. Good. What did you think?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's like, it's a tough act to follow, 28 Days Later. And I think they did some interesting stuff with it. But like, there's room for us to kind of pick this up, I think, because like there's been talk of 28 months for a while.
Yeah, currently as we're recording this right now, it says in development, but it's not got a production status, it's not got anything else. I think it's one of those that's on a permanent sort of like, at some point maybe, Danny Boyle's not said anything about it. I don't know if the original cast, I don't know is the answer, but it's definitely not dead. There seems to be some sort of a brief blip on the old heart monitor of maybe not. But as it stands at the moment, these are the only two films to exist, and there is no indication another one is definitely coming out.
Cool. All right. Well, look, I think it's pretty small franchise as it stands, so I don't think there's much more use of kind of raking over these films.
Agreed. And where we set ours, I feel we can both be in agreement. Whether usually we would pick individually, I feel like it kind of is the natural course.
There's no need to the retcon part of the name is to kind of like, if a film's franchise needs just slicing in at some point and kind of just forgetting something which happens after it.
Yeah.
In this instance, I thought 28 Weeks was perfectly serviceable. So this is like, just makes sense to kind of come on after that.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. And obviously the idea being behind the first one is it's a few weeks after this outbreak's happened and they drop in the aftermath. 28 Weeks Later is obviously then dealing with the aftermath even further. So I feel like the natural course of things is then to go in here, possibly following the same 28, and then obviously 28.
Yeah, so, I think this is where we go with, and months makes sense.
Yes, 28 months, I think, following their same sort of chronological.
Right. So look, I reckon we'll just get into this.
Yes.
What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I'm going to grab my pen.
Yeah, we need
I
some
should
pens.
have had it ready.
I'm going to make some room. Yeah?
Yes, agreed. So, themes. What do we agree based upon this? So again, if you're new to the video and you've not watched before, you've just joined us on Halloween, check out some of our other videos. But we usually start by discussing or talking about key themes, things that we think are important or that have been going on in the film. And so we write down our own versions before confirming. So you've got your book ready.
I do, because I'm thick as... Well, you heard me butcher that poor man's name, so you can tell that I'm not exactly the brightest.
So why don't you write down how you feel?
Well, so I think the topmost thing is like infected is obviously a part of it. And they refer to it as they refer to them as infected. They don't sort of say they're dead. They're not like people coming back to life or anything like that. It's very much a sort of virusy plague thing. So I think that whole kind of it's a, some sort of biological, rational kind of thing is a big part of what they got.
Yep, agreed.
What about you?
I mean, one of the things I'm going to say is I think something that they did very well in the first one. Yes, thank you. And something that I think that they continue to do well in the sequel, and that is just that it is brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. And more importantly, and I'm going to explain as I write this one down, is it is no fun. So let me explain what I mean by that is there is a romantic element to a degree, I think, in zombie films. So Dawn of the Dead, for example, probably one of the most famous ones, is a kind of you've got the mole, you can play around, there's no parents, you don't have to worry about money. There's kind of wouldn't it be fun? And when Zack Snyder redid it, there's still that element of them hanging out in the mall. In Land of the Dead, in other films, there are scenes where it's
This is the thing with zombie films is that there's inevitably after you watch the thing you think of how would you handle it, and that's usually is quite fun. Like as you say, you go into a shopping mall and you've got access to everything.
Exactly. And even other films, like, okay, The Walking Dead to a certain extent goes a little bit more, but there's still moments of, you know, like, oh, they're living this great life, they're outdoors. Like, I'm not saying it's not a bad place, but the thing that exists in 28 Days Later, the things that exist in 28 Weeks Later is there is no fun. There is no romantic element of this. Wouldn't it be great if, this is bad. It is nasty and horrible. 28 Days Later, I mean, in particular, just example, because it is an infection, as you say, and it's not a zombie bite, they can't trust water supplies because they don't know if the infection's in there. So there's that great scene where they're having to drink the cans of Coke, and then because obviously they're getting sugar rushes, they're having to take paracetamol. So little things like drinking water, it's not like, that's not something you can now do. Yeah. There is no fun in this at all. And I think the brutal violence of the infected and what they go through, and this idea of it being no fun.
Yeah, and like just to tack on that, I got aggression.
Yeah.
Is it aggression 2 G's? I'm going to put aggro.
Aggro, yeah, nice. Argo even. No, it is aggro, whatever. Yeah.
But like, it's to kind of like the brutal thing of it, then like, because it's this rage virus thing, the level of just sheer aggression in these films is like, it's pretty tough.
Yep.
What else you got?
I've got like little hope that it is just about ironically, with the titles called Days and Weeks, it's like little hope. It's about just keep going. There's no, okay, like we can go here and resettle and everything else. It felt to me like it's literally like in both of them they have an objective, but that objective is very straightforward. It is, let's get out of the city. And the second one, it's, I need to find my brother. We need to get out of here. There's no, where do we go? It is exactly that. Little hope, keep going, just live.
Yeah, and I think kind of more what I've got is that, like, I think family is a big part of those two films.
I agree completely.
So like you've obviously got in 28 Days there's the family of like there's the dad and his daughter.
Yep.
And like that Jim and Selena, is it, are kind of like missing their families so much, and there's that sort of thing, and they're trying to like be a new family. And obviously in 28 Weeks it's all about like the two kids and all that.
Yeah, exactly. It's their dad, they find their dad, and then trying to find out what actually happened to their mum. So I agree, family is definitely a key one.
I think Tekken's dying.
Oh yeah.
Poor Tekken.
Poor Tekken. And then the other one that I've got as well is this idea of, it's like, again, I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, so I'm just going to put it down as it comes out of my mouth, but it's like the worst side of people. Now, there is glimmers of hope. There are some nice people, but for the most cases, you know...
Yeah, people are dangerous.
People are dangerous. They're just as bad of what's going on. It's this flight or fight. Everyone is fighting. It is, you know, in the first one, you've obviously got the famous, like the army people that are there to rescue them that clearly aren't. And arguably, they're even worse than the infected. And then in the second one, you have this idea of the American military are trying to help. But then when shit hits the fan, it's kill everyone. Yeah. And when that one guy... played by Jeremy Renner, who obviously goes on to play Hawkeye, which I didn't realise he was in it. That was kind of a nice, like, oh shit, he is good. It's his people then turn on him. It's like you're now part of that problem. It is the worst side of people.
Yep. With that in mind, I also got like it's military.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just my spelling. I will turn that off before we get into the hour because that's obviously struggling. So yeah, the military is like a big part of those films. So both of them have got like strong military sort of presence in it.
100%. So yeah, you get a real difference of military and people, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I agree.
Got another one?
No, I'm good. I think, to be honest with you, infected, the aggression. I've come up with very similar with brutal and violence.
There's two more things which maybe.
Go for it.
Maybe, I don't know. So I've got Landon.
Yeah.
That's that. Like for my money, it's an essential component of the 28 stuff.
Interesting. Already we may differ on our ideas,
but like, I'd say, I like it. You know, Landon. And another thing I got is there's kind of like a story sort of component, which is what I think is important to the 28 stuff is It's control and failure to control.
Nice.
So what I mean by that is in both those films that they've got that sort of thing where like it looks like there's order is beginning to come together, and it's usually sort of like, not usually because there's only two of them, but the military are beginning to try to control this thing and get a handle on it. And then it's always that sort of the failure to kind of keep a lid on stuff.
Yeah,
because
agreed.
of just like,
Well, that's a theme, basically the entire film, the theme of the films, because obviously 28 Days Later, I'd say spoilers, this is all spoilers. So,
yeah, and
but
bear in mind that these films are like 15 years old.
yeah,
and
exactly,
older,
yeah,
so
true. But
20 years old now.
the reason why the infection exists, which I always thought was really cool, is that they were trying to cure rage.
Yes.
And so the infection itself is pure rage. So your idea of this idea of control and failure to control is actually what starts the whole film off as well. So
Lovely.
it's clearly a key theme
And
throughout.
the final thing, which I think is more important with 28 Days, is face at the window. It uses the scary face at the window gag over and over and over and over and over.
Okay.
And 28 weeks doesn't do it at all. But 28 Days has got, like, it happens maybe 3 or 4 times, which is quite a lot in a film to have that same kind of jump gag of the scary face of the window.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird, they do like a pause, so like they sort of look round and the face is there, lit up, scary, and then it comes in. It's sort of, they always kind of put that little beat in it. So if possible, I think to kind of like, that's one of their main kind of like scare components is the
Yep.
face at the window. So if we can sneak that in, I think it'd be good. Just before, like, maybe if we do this before or not, I kind of like wrote out the pattern which is laid out in 28 weeks. Because at the beginning of the movie, there's like a kind of thing, a timeline.
Yeah, I remember.
So if I just say it, I'm not going to bother writing it down, but just so we're kind of clear, it goes, it was 15 days after infection, mainland of Britain is in quarantine. Then it goes 28 days later. Let me get this closer to me because my eyesight's good, but my handwriting's shit. 28 days later, Britain destroyed by the rage virus. 5 weeks, infected die of starvation. So in 5 weeks, the infection is done. 11 weeks, American-led NATO force starts setting up London, basically. 18 weeks, mainland Britain free of infected. 24 weeks, reconstruction begins. 28 weeks, they're off to the races. And so it's 28 weeks is set on the Isle of Dogs, and that place is called District 1. So once again, if this is useful for us when we're writing the months, who knows? Also, just so we know, 28 months is 2.3 years. So, you know, like,
Yeah.
call it what it is. And then 28 weeks after this film finishes, oh no, it does 28 days later after where this finishes off, Paris has fallen. We see that shot of the
Yep.
Eiffel Tower, the people coming up. So, you know, there we go. I think I reckon we should probably start the clock. I mean, if you're ready.
Yes, I am ready. Clear out some more space here.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to put this over here.
That's a candle, that one.
Yeah, I know, and like all kind of like nice candles, you don't end up setting them on fire, which seems stupid. Insure them against it for arson. So what I'm going to do is, before we get stuck into this, just make sure our mic's good, because you know it's new microphones. And,
Yep.
you know,
This keeps spinning round, so apologies. I'm going to keep tagging on my
I
hoodie.
think we're all right. And
It seems.
Tekken seems to have got
Yeah.
its act together. Right. So in which case, let's do 28 months.
Yeah, let's
All
do
right.
this.
I'm going to set the timer. So, where is it? Clock. Timer. 30 minutes. So what we do with this is we always set a 30-minute timer first of all, just to make sure that we're on course.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go from there. So for
It's also worth mentioning as well that we do the 3-act structure. So that's important as we're setting up the timer. We follow most of our films that we've done so far follow this 3 acts. So
so let's do that right now. Quick, sit this down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Why is my dog barking? So we got Act 1.
Yep.
Act 2. I better check that actually. Act 3. And we got Act 0.1.
Yes.
So, you guys know this, you definitely know this, and we shouldn't be doing it in our own time, but whatever. Act 1 is kind of like the setup of the film. The bomb on the bus gets armed when it goes above 50, drops below 50, blows up. Keanu Reeves going around trying to stop that bomb. Then he takes Dennis Hopper's head off. Act 0.1 is him in the elevator kind of doing all that fun.
I like your description of it being the promise. This is what, if you keep watching, you'll experience the first kill in a horror film.
So, Mike, where are you at with 28 months later?
So, the beginning of 28 Days Later does a very interesting beginning where it drops us right in the middle. We don't know what's going on. 28 weeks later, as you said at the beginning, gives a breakdown of what's happening. For me, I feel like it being 2.3 years later would be that the Act 0.1 needs to kind of say what's happened over these 2 years. So this is my way. I'm going to jump into the franchise.
Yep.
Following on what the infected do, where they infect and move forward, the end of 28 weeks later starts with that shot of the Eiffel Tower. It's now spread. Now, one of the things with 28 days is that obviously with the UK being an island, it's containable. The end of 28 weeks later suggests it's now hit Europe.
Yep.
And with all those countries connected, it's essentially just going to continue to wave. So my idea would be, I'm going to follow the same original 2 that have somehow made it to France.
Yep.
And we see that over these 2 years, the infection has spread across Europe. It's been almost impossible to contain. There's quarantines go up, quarantines go down. As the infection moves, what's happening is the infection or the affected people aren't staying in their area. They're kind of like moving along, trying to chase the food supply. And those people that have somehow managed to stay are left behind. I'm going to start it with the idea being that certain groups of people, probably military-led or individuals, get down to the semantics, have bunkered down.
In where's this?
In France,
Yep.
like across Europe. They know it's coming. The speed of it makes it very difficult. But obviously, seeing the pattern emerging, other countries are able to kind of get a heads up, like stuff is happening. So it starts with this idea that the virus has swept across Europe, gone into the Eastern culture and everything else. And then there's this lull, this kind of like, it seems they've died off because eventually they are going to run out of food sources.
Yeah, like we said, they kicked the bucket after
5 weeks.
5 weeks, yeah.
So the idea being now is that we are 2 years in the future. For a year and a half, people have lived in these underground places. They're all self-sufficient little areas. It then gets to the point, and this is where my idea is, so they're sheltered down, where groups are going from shelter to clear them out. They're now worried they want to do it, but they want to go in and check to make sure there is no infection in this shelter, that if they open it up, things aren't going to come out. They're checking for people. These 2 from the first one, as is very much hinted at, when their mum is brought in, is immune. But they are technically infected, and you get that suggestion that this person is infected. So these kids with these people that have been living together for a year are like, they're clearing house and you are infected. Like, you're not passing it on, but you're going to kill. So they need to get out. Being in France, not having made it much further, they're just at the beginning of the Channel Tunnel, they decide that the best place to go is where the infection started, knowing, of course, that most of the infections have died on and moved off. In the process of doing this, I would have imagined something like there's some kind of communication or this, that a group of survivors where it originally started have now kind of like, the virus has moved on, we're free, we're clear, everything's happy. So now, ironically, although England was the worst place to be, it's now the best place to be because there is no infection left.
Yep.
So these 2, with the people that they've lived with, leave to go to the UK. I was thinking like maybe a small island on the way or something like that. Of course, that's when shit hits the fan. So I imagine that Act 0.1 is establishing that these people have lived in this bunker for a year. They then realise the army's coming, clearing them out. They're going to fail. Act 1 is making it back to the England, taking over a ferry, which obviously goes horribly wrong. They reach England and they realise that London has been militarised. The military are searching. So they decide to, rather than head to London, they're going to head down the coast. So the film is actually shot, I imagine, something like they land in Brighton and they've got to make their way to Portsmouth to get the ferries to get somewhere. And I imagined in my head it being the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, Isle of Wight's cool.
And so the idea being is there's a community that are still around in the Isle of Wight. So Act 0.1, everything's destroyed, people living in bunkers. Act 1, we've got to go, jump on the ferry. Whole shit goes down on the ferry. They make it, they get to Brighton. They've got to make their way, Act 2, from Brighton to Portsmouth while being actively pursued at this point by the military that knows a ship has landed and they're after them. In amongst this time, they come across survivors that are obviously terrified the infection might be coming back. It's not an idea. I didn't like the idea of stealing. I like the idea of like, you could be infected, so I'm going to kill you before you can infect, kind of thing. So there's just absolute rage at these random people. Act 3, they reach the Isle of Wight, they reach this commune, everything's happy until they realise that the kid is infected, kill him, and in doing so, start the spread of the infection again. The girl, seeing all of this happens, rather than help them, just lets the place burn. And she leaves the island as what's left, and essentially the infection has started up again. That's my
It's nice.
3-act structure.
It's nice. It's good. I think we can definitely squidge this stuff together here. So I was going with like the idea that in the UK that like places are beginning to get back together again because we've got 2 and a bit years, and so I was like as a kind of like commentary on aging populations and stuff, that like basically that people which would have survived this 2 and a bit years ago would have been 20-year-olds, because like anybody under that would have been gobbled up and anyone over that wouldn't have been able to outrun them and stuff. So those people are now like late 20s, early 30s, and they kind of got themselves sort of set up, and there's maybe a few different sort of like almost communes going on. And I was going to do a sort of like a commentary about like warring nations again, and also kind of like we seem to be slipping back to this sort of weird like Cold War era stuff right now, and so I was going to kind of like reflect that by having it that they're sort of hanging out there in like maybe some sort of like bit. I was thinking maybe what's it called? It's in London, just on the outskirts of it. Something other on sea. It's like the kind of like the town with it's got like fairground rides and shit like that in it. It's just down the River Thames. Can't remember. Have I written it down? No, whatever. It's like that sort of, Jesus, you guys are screaming at the TV, aren't you? But anyway, like, so they're sort of set up, and then it's going to have like shipping containers kind of washing up, and when they crash up and they sort of let out, it's infected in them.
Okay.
And you're like, what the hell? And so they sort of take them out and think maybe it's like, something happened at sea or whatever, they're not sure. Then another set of shipping containers come up, and there's like a few of them beginning to float up. And one of the outposts further up, who they're sort of mates with, falls to like the rage virus, which is sort of broken out there. And so they're like, what's going on? And then ultimately it's just like a kind of like Walking Dead vibe, that like the French and continental Europe are re-invading the UK, and they're doing it by sending infected out first of all, and then they're just going to like crash a boat in with like more infected on it, and some sort of struggle thing. And so I was going to use things like language gaps and things like that to kind of fuck with it and kind of like make it probably a bit more Walking Dead than what you did. So I prefer where you're at, because this feels more 28 days, or 28 I should say. Whereas what I went, it was kind of like, it felt like I was robbing a lot of Walking Dead.
Well, the things that I like about yours there is the idea of things getting slightly back on their feet. Like the idea of these people have been in a bunker, they're not going to be that many. So I like the idea of these 20-year-olds surviving.
And so they'd have got like, because all the military stuff's failed, that they would have got like guns and things like that from bases and things knocking around.
Because I imagined like Act 0.1 being a recap of where things are. Act 1, these people going in, taking out bunkers because they're just not running any risk. Like if there's the trace of it, they're just literally burning them out. But my issue was in Act 2, there's not that much going on with with this, whether your idea of like they land and they've got to make their way to the safe harbour through these factions would be great.
Yes, it is like the...
But I would imagine it, rather than it being by like country or anything else. I mean, you could definitely have perhaps like pocket groups, maybe like communities that have gotten together, and so you still have like a difference. But look, I can't imagine it being international.
Yeah, look, there's some key things which I think are real nice, which we should go with. So like you went with the 2 kids again, and I've got just an aversion of anything to do with like when kids are in stories. I'm always like, Jesus Christ, but like. That they're quite a useful mechanic to move the story on.
Yeah.
And also you need that you need that Watson character who doesn't really know what's up, so you can explain the story to someone.
And also as well, him being like, I'm guessing like 14, he'd be almost 17, 18. Yeah. She would be early 20s, so they're young, like older teenagers rather than children.
Yeah, so I really like that. Like we pick up with these 2 who are in Europe, and the idea that like it's been 5 weeks, so actually the UK might be safe, and like a crossing could be really exciting and cool.
I had in my head you mentioned it a while ago when we were just talking at work. You mentioned about the ferry in War of the Worlds.
Yes,
and and I thought to myself like, because I am a big zombie fan and I like it. I have kind of gotten a bit overboard with it, so I've kind of like I'm a bit full of zombies.
Done with zombies.
But Train to Busan, which was the Korean film that did really well, this idea of being on it. Obviously what's terrifying is they can't do anything in between. I liked the idea of in Act 1, when they are using the ferry to get over, what if shit hits the fan when they're on the boat and they are too far, that point of like, when that no point of no return, halfway through the channel, they can jump out and they can swim. But like stuff starts hitting.
Yeah, so why don't we so what we know for sure, I think we go with the kids who are now like young adults. So that's our main kind of like, that's the story. We know we got to get to the UK, right?
Yep.
So like if this is the sort of like ferry crossing moment, where we get and start dealing with this stuff. Really nice scary scene on the ferry somehow. Maybe it's like they need someone to help do the ferry because you don't just
so I imagine the team that they're with in the shelter, because they've been living together for 2 years at this point, having got there, the army guy perhaps, or maybe not, but like the other people they're with, that there needs to be like a group of them. It's not just 2 on their own. There is a group of survivors, maybe a mix of military and non-military, that are making their way. What that also gives us, kind of cheaply but in a good way, is this idea of 2 years spent together. They want to stick together. They have become their own family, which, as we have established, is important. But what gives us is, it gives us bodies.
Yeah.
So we can take people out. So for an arbitrary number, say there's 12 people, 2 of them are the young adults, the other 10 are a mix mash.
I think like language barrier and stuff is useful in this sort of thing, because like they got 2 years, so you would have picked up certain words and stuff, but like there's no
Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, exactly.
To help. Yeah.
And so that could be useful, especially when shit starts hitting the fan and people are sort of screaming in their native language.
Yep, I love it.
Don't know what they mean. So this is so we can tighten these bits up. This is a lovely moment, and then we got this kind of like bit when it was. So how did it work out? They got to the Isle of Wight, you were saying?
Yeah, so like, I mean, it doesn't have to be the Isle of Wight. I just like the idea of like, it's an even more obscure island. And I like the idea of, again, you were saying about London. I said at the beginning of this, I disagreed. I think it's England.
Yeah.
And so I like the idea of the coastal towns. So landing in, let's say it hits the White Cliffs of Dover, and they've got to get from Dover through Brighton to Portsmouth to the ports. You still get those bigger city builds up, those kind of like famous ones. but you're going through the south coast to get to Portsmouth, to get another ferry, to get across where there's a crossing that they can use. So the film, when they land here, is then the south coast of England to get to the ferry that takes them.
I think we could maybe do something where like to kind of help make this more imperative, we make it so that like mainland UK is dangerous and there's word that this is so during Act 2 something needs to go seriously sideways zombie wise here, because otherwise there's so much land in the UK.
I mean, if you've got this overall arc of this family are going here, what you could have is that coming out of it, they've got very little communication. Maybe that there's just radio between the bunkers. That's how they find out they're coming. And they say there's a rumour that where it started is where it's safe.
Yeah, so if we just do the old thing of like, look, the journey is the two young adults, we'll call them now, are starting off in France and they got to get to the Isle of Wight.
Yes.
And the things which are going to make that difficult for them is there's 2 channel crossings.
Yep.
And there's also the things which are going to make it difficult is we got infected here, and then we have like infected dotted out through this stuff as well.
Yep.
And so that's going to slow things down. And we also have humans, which are a problem.
Yep.
So humans, and then some sort of you had it that like they realise that the kid's infected.
Yes. So I had it.
Boy.
The end of 28 days later is bleak. The end of 28 weeks later is a little bit of hope, and then it's bleak. And I like the fact that there's
28 days actually finishes relatively upbeat in that like the plane's flying around, and Jim's kind of like has that look on his face of like actually everything's going to be all right. But I know what you mean. In broad strokes, it's still not great, is it?
I kind of like the idea of it. I mean, maybe it doesn't do well with the rest of the franchise, but I like the idea of when they finally get there. Because one of the things that comes across is like people are just as dangerous as the infected in every encounter. Like the infected is why this is all kicking off, but you have in 28 days, the army, awful.
Well, it's control and failure to control.
So what if when they get here, it's a military base that's set up as opposed to like a commune, and when they get in, he fails the infected test.
Yeah, why don't we put a sting in the tail there and like, we've had military bases twice. What if this is like a science thing?
Yeah.
And so that you're lured into a sense of like, oh, well, science is
it's going to be good. And then I want these 2 that have survived. I love the idea of them just being like, it's a red flag, and there's kind of like, no, he's okay, he's immune and all this. And it's just like, there are no chances. Like, that's one of the things that they hint at 28 weeks when it's like, she's immune, and the doctor's like, we can study it, we can do this. Yeah. And he's just like, no.
You don't get it.
You don't get it. Like, this is totalitarian. Like, there's no, let's judge each individual. It's a take them out. Guy is killed. In the second one, she's infected, and when he kisses her, like the saliva, that's what spreads it. I would love it as whatever it is, like they go in, they shoot him or something like that, the blood gets on them, something like that. And ironically, in trying to kill him or get rid of the body because they're worried about the infection, they actually start it up, and then all hell breaks loose. The girl, the sister, sees it breaking loose, has the opportunity to help them. Call back to the beginning of 28 weeks later when the dad's got that moment where he sees his wife and he chooses to run and leave them. This is a kind of callback to that where he sees the zombies. She has the opportunity to save the scientists, and rather than like cowardly, it's a locks the door, fuck you, and leaves, and the facility is taken over, and it's just got her.
What if we did so like if we nick the shipping container stuff, which I had, and use that as something scary here to kind of get the zombies mainland UK.
Yeah.
What if so we've established that there's these shipping containers with infected in them.
Yeah.
And like one of them drifts up on the Isle of Wight, and that's the thing which kind of like, there's that moment where she's like, do you know when Jim in 28 Days does the thing to kind of
Yes, yeah. She sees one is washed up and she opens it up.
The audience know because they've seen it earlier on.
Yeah.
And like, so she's just kind of like, kicks the thing open and off she goes, and out they get.
Yeah. No, I like it. So going back to your idea, in Act 2, these factions that are fighting each other. So they try to leave France. They're being pursued by the military. They get on the ferry. When they're on the ferry, let's say one of these factions is raiding it, and their goal is just take people out, and they get caught in between two different communes fighting over this ship, because their way of surviving is whatever gets washed up. They're taking like supplies, nothing new really coming in. It's too dangerous to explore. So one of the big things is just stealing ships as they wash up, or as the tides bring them through all these massive shipping containers. They have a big fight, and one of them's full of infected, and she sees it. It overruns the ferry, but they manage to get out.
Yeah, what if we do that? That like there's when they get to the UK, like the ship kind of, look at the hair coming off. It's not going to be from me, is it? That like the
your chest hair.
That's curly. So what if like there's like on the beach there's like loads and loads and loads of ships all kind of like crashed up.
Nice.
And so it's because of just like the nature of like the currents around there or something.
Yep.
This is where ships wash up, and like the locals there know, oh, this one's washed up, and they're sort of coming along to do like a scavenge.
Yeah.
And there's that sort of like, you know, kind of standoffish. Are we cool? Are we not cool? We got language barrier problems. We got all that sort of stuff, and then it just goes sideways quick.
Yeah, nice.
And then in amongst there could be the shipping container stuff, which is the kiss later on.
Yeah. So then the end of Act 2 is working on this idea of then getting away from them. We've got the sides of Brighton.
Your microphone.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. We've got the sides of Brighton making their way down. They get to the facility, doing another crossing.
They're sort of like, as I say, it's more scientific. They seem kind of cooler, and like their gardening's great, and you know everything's.
And they've managed to find a way of like being scientists. Everything's like, I don't know, self-sufficient running. Yeah. It's a safe haven.
Maybe no guns or something.
Yeah.
You know.
But then the scientists realise he has the infection. Having studied it, they understand it. That they're like, it's not a fact of he can turn anyone else. Understanding, because they were documenting in 28 weeks what was going on.
Yeah.
So I think they would have found out, and they're just like, they don't recognise it's him, but they know the danger he brings. They kill him. She's devastated, walks out, sees the container, sees the facility behind her. And so rather than it being a surprise, she opens it up to basically be like...
Yeah, no, how about, as I say, if there's no sort of like obvious guns and weapons and stuff on there, that they kind of like say, oh, we're just going to give you a shot to kind of help you with whatever. And they actually like lethal injection effects for either the younger of them.
Yeah. And
so she's just like, you know, gets what the fuck, and they're trying to console, and she's like legging it out, and you know it stops being consoling and it's controlling again. They're trying to like stop her, and then she can kind of like do some escape,
and then sees the container, opens it up, they flood, and we just see them, and it's just her there, perhaps seeing this whole place burning, and just it ends with her staring off. Like
that, the meme of the kid with the burning.
Yeah.
But
nice.
I mean, or like she could jump in a boat and bugger off. Maybe our one is mostly seafaring, and we kind of like lean on.
Yeah, definitely. However, I kind of weirdly, I'm kind of fixated on this idea of I really don't like there being any pleasure. I like the idea of her just looking. So, having spent 2 years underground on the hopes things will get better. Like the mentality, we were in lockdown, everyone was. It's like, you know, what that does to you. Imagine that on a much more extreme for 4 times longer. This idea of then getting outside, the hope that brings for just to see the worst of people, everything goes wrong. The only thing she has is her brother, it's taken from her. I like the kind of, at the end, she's just pushed to her whole...
The nihilistic.
Yeah, we just need to start over. Like, this world needs to burn. And so it ends with her maybe even getting killed, opening up the...
Or maybe we do so what happens is that the outbreak takes place, you know, they're often running around, and she's kind of like skirting around the place. She gets to like another sort of boat face area, and there's like a scientist about to go, and there's a bit of a standoff, and she just, you know, batters the guy. He plops into the drink. She gets in the boat and is like just driving away with, as you say, just balls of fire and stuff behind her.
Yeah, where it's all kicked off.
So, you know, because then she's not just, she hasn't just kind of like inadvertently, or sort of not inadvertently, but like indirectly released these things to kill them. She's actually physically killed somebody as well now.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And perhaps we can have seeing
sort of
her, because
stepping over a line, isn't
she
it?
doesn't do it in the second one, that we can see perhaps maybe one of these first incursions where whatever it is that attacks the ship, another colony or maybe infected from a container, we can see her reluctance to fight.
Yeah, because did she kill her dad in 28 weeks? Didn't she shoot him?
I think she does, yeah, but then she throws the gun down, doesn't she? It's not like she's hardened. So we see her struggling with what has to be done, whether at this point there's no hesitation, she takes him out.
Yeah, so we got like, this is like Europe.
Yep.
This is the UK. This is Isle of Wight.
Yep.
The ferry crossings, we got this ferry crossing scary, and as I say, the thing which can kind of like make it go sideways is if there's like a collision at sea or something. And
Yeah, I like the idea of it being like it's all built up. So actually, like in their minds, they're going for the coast, but what's actually happened is it's several ships deep. It's like, you know, there's no way you can be like, oh, we'll just moor up here, pay the guy. It's so basically, you've got the crossing, it stops, and they've got to make their way through ships and cargo to get to the land.
Yeah, and I think we do this sort of like this crossing should be done in like bad weather and stuff, because like I think maybe this leap is kind of like dealing with like the big stuff, and this thing's just like shit weather and maybe under dark or something like that. I don't know, but like yeah, the danger can't be the same twice. It needs to be a bit different second time round.
Yeah. Well, in this one, they've gone through. We can have it as it's like two factions at war, and they've got to get through. Perhaps in this one, they're being chased by...
Yeah, so that's under cover of darkness, and it's in shit weather.
And they're being chased out by another one. The scientists fight them off because they know that they're dangerous, because obviously, why haven't these guys gone? The scientists perhaps...
Yeah, I mean, they could just like kind of like put like... If you know, in Children of Men, when he sort of like bump starts the car, and the only time they know is when they sort of like maybe do under rowing power for a bit to kind of escape in the crap weather, and then they turn the engine on, and there's just like a little bit of them being like, you know, these people behind being like,
get them, go after them. They make it to Isle of Wight. These factions in between themselves, scientists greet them, sit them down. They're all very nice.
Everything's good. Great. Yeah.
Then they come back with the blood results. You see a thing. They inject them. Kid doesn't react. She's not getting one. What's going on? They try talking to her, explaining that they've done it humanely. Some hazmat suits come along. Her brother. She's screaming and yelling and all this stuff. She storms outside, and they're like, "You are free to leave, but like we are not allowing this in. You are fine, but your brother is gone. Deal with it." Like matter of fact, very scientifically. She's out on the beaches. It's all horrible. Her brother's been killed. She sees.
Or we up the ante and have it so that like they kind of like lock her up and she escapes.
Yeah.
And then gets to the coast.
Sees the container. Sees the ship. Is going to jump on the ship, but has that moment of no, screw you, and opens the container, and we see the infected coming out of it.
She then gets to like some sort of boat place.
Yep, kills the other guy. She goes off, as we see, and then you can have the nice section of the infected coming through, because other than briefly here, perhaps in a crossing when they come across one that hits the ship and they escape, like you don't, this really, the infected are only kind of here, maybe a tiny bit here, and then again at the end there.
Yeah, so I think if we got like a minute and a half, so I think we've mostly got like stuff together. I think what we need, like the end bit, I think is pretty tight, kind of. We need to obviously put some meat on it in a second. The crossing is quite tight. Like the journey through here, I think we do with neatening up, and like this first bit, I think we can do with buttoning down, and also like Act 0.1. Maybe we do. Once again, it's that promise. So maybe we have something at like the. Maybe we do like a commentary on like
C
and like immigration stuff and like people kind of like, you know, the borders of Calais and things. So maybe, you know, right now or I don't know if it's still going on, but they got those kind of like fences around there to kind of stop people being able to just kind of they've got detention centres and things for people leaving to get to the UK. What if that's kind of like a place which has been used to kind of like as a place of holding and safety, Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
So we're like, it's kind of once again, it's a bit Walking Dead where they go into the jail, but like it's now something which was used to keep people in is actually used to keep shit out.
Yeah, no, I like that. Nice. Yeah, that's very good. And we can see that they need to leave. The desire of it.
Yeah, what we need, some sort of, I think, like, so we've got like the.
It could just be that the virus seems to have been wiped out. Like, no.
So that is the 30 minutes up.
Yep.
So we got another 30 minutes to kind of tie this up.
So what if they're in this port, they're here, they've heard rumours from and you see that basically we're in a detention facility, they've managed to survive and everything else, the door's open and they're just absolutely massacred. And then it cuts to our family in a detention centre and they realise very quickly that these people that have now, after 2 years, coming to rescue, they think they're being rescued, aren't. They're coming in and just wiping everyone out,
so hang on,
which leads the desire to be like, we need to get out.
What if we borrow, I was sort of saying about like the kind of established things, right? So if it opens and we're at, like, we need another installation not a million miles away where they're friendly. So like if we've got, this is the Calais one where the border guard stuff. There's another one here which are friendly, and these two are kind of communicating with each other. Everything's good.
Yeah.
Our people are here, our two people.
Yeah.
And then the movie opens up with these guys being invaded by random shitheads stealing stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And what happens is that these guys are just hearing that crack of gunfire, and they're like, because the world's quiet.
Yeah.
There's nothing going on.
Yeah, of course.
And so you just hear like they're hearing crack of gunfire, like just the distant going on. And that's where Act 1 starts up, with them being like something's up, and
you could see maybe in a montage the relationship developing. So little things like singing happy birthday to each other through the AM radio. Like they clearly have become close, even though they have never met because it's too dangerous to go outside. And then they hear from the radio.
We need to establish the relationship before we can kind of let it fall
apart. We see in the beginning it all being told what's happening through this AM radio conversation, them enjoying each other and all this stuff.
This is where we're fucked, is that like what we need to do is we need our Watson character to kind of help with exposition. Hello, Basil.
Austin.
So, in this one it's Jim.
Yeah.
And in this one it's the kids. So like the people need to explain to somebody. So whether it's like, because it's two and a bit years later, who wouldn't know what's going on?
Or what if we get a recap? It's these two communes. We've seen what's happened to Europe. They can't go outside to meet and everything else. Some people go in. There's a big massacre and everything else. These guys sitting there, they haven't heard from their commune in weeks and weeks and weeks. And then all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. We as the audience assume. So this is Act 1. It's one of these bunkers or shelters, or as you call it, like these port bits, is taken out. Then Act 1 starts. They're all nervous. We haven't heard from them for weeks. We have to assume they're gone. There's a knock on the door. They're like, hadn't heard a knock for 2 years, are freaked out. They're paranoid that they're like, whatever happened to them is about to happen to us. They open it up and it's a survivor. Somehow someone's gotten through, and they're like, they are going round taking it. I've come here. You've got hours before they arrive.
Yeah. So if I'm reading you right, or if not, I think we're onto something, which is that like, you got blue.
Yeah, I've got blue.
So like this is like the French coast, right?
Yeah.
Woo. And it's someone who's escaped from this.
Yeah.
So Act 0.1 is them sort of stumbling up the way and arriving at this friendly place, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing here? And like, what happened? And he's just like, they're going to be coming.
Yeah.
And they're like, what the fuck? And so this person is here. They're sort of like, what are you doing? You got to chill out, all this sort of stuff. And that's when we see the bad guys rolling up. They're just going from place to place, kind of taking them out.
Yeah.
That's when that's Act 0.1, and we have this kind of like brutal firefight of these bastards doing this stuff.
Yep.
Our two people are here rather than that one, and they hear the gunfire going off, and because it's just that little bit closer, maybe the wind's helping them. You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
have your colour back.
Thank you.
And they're like, something's up, and maybe someone could be looking and just see, you know, like muzzle flash a long way
100%.
off, and you're just like, okay, this is bad. Maybe like that same, it feels a bit funny that same person escaping, you know, that one person who was at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Did you hear about that guy?
Yeah.
It's the same person who's just going like,
Yeah.
this is
Or
disaster.
what if these ones have been talking to each other for a while, right? So there's a relationship there. What if it's like a long distance relationship? This is a girl. She's living with a bunch of older people. What if this is her boyfriend that she's met through the radio? His commune starts, is all this. He gets out. He makes it to her, and he's like, "You have to trust me." She's forced to be like, we've been in a relationship for a year on radio, we've never actually met, but she goes with him, and as they leave and the rest of her commune are being like, you're idiots, we see these rolling up, and then they take them out. They're then like, shit, so this is Act 1, we need to go. He talks about that, like, through, because he's the one with the radio, his one, let's imagine his is the big one, there are the smaller ones, he's here, this one gets taken out, everyone's coming, he goes there. He talks about that on the radio, he's heard that there's this survival place, like it's all I know, it's the best I've got. So the three of them, maybe a couple of other people, jump on the ferry, that's when shit hits, go through land, he's killed during the ferry, she gets her brother.
Maybe that's it. So like, if once again, if Act 0.1, if we can just sort of say that this is like the lone kind of person stumbling across open ground, that's quite scary sort of promise thing, gets to this place, is like they're coming, there's a nasty firefight, and it's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So that's this section.
Yeah.
Then Act 1 early is the kind of like, we need to get out of here. So I really like the idea of a long distance relationship, but also like we got language barrier stuff, and maybe the long distance relationship could be with the girl from 28 Weeks.
Yeah.
And so
Imogen Roots. Imogen, something like that.
Yeah.
Imogen, yeah.
And so like, if one person, like maybe two people, to make it so it's not always just one person escapes, it's two people escape.
Yeah.
Get to the Calais one, and are like, something's on its way up. We got to get out of here.
Imogen poops.
There's a bit of a hoo-ha. Some people, that's where we get our long distance shot, because I really like the idea of seeing the muzzle flashes going off.
Yeah.
Is that like, opens up with this person getting to here, they're talking to him, these guys are a bit like, getting excited. That one person goes over there, that's the beginning of the movie, Act 0.1, this place gets taken out in Act 0.1.
Yeah.
Right? Two people leave this thing to come over, and it's like the long distance relationship thing, stuff like that. So this is the leaving of the Calais. Leave.
Yeah.
And they're like, not everybody's convinced. Of course they're not.
Yeah.
And so you just want to run off with your boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even know him. It's not a real relationship.
What are you talking about? Yeah, and there's also some language barrier stuff. Some people have to translate for each other. It's awkward and lumpy and whatever.
So let's say like a small group, because we need some numbers, goes with them.
Yeah,
her brother, her, a few others.
An older dude who's just like, I was born in Calais. I actually worked on the ferries. I can probably get it started.
Perfect.
Driving, it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know if the sea's clear. And then the guy's like, but we do know something's coming.
Yeah,
he trusts him.
And so there's a few of them, there's a splinter sort of thing, because once again, it's that like control and failure to control. So like maybe some lot are trying to be a bit shitty, and it all kind of like ends in an argument of some sort. As these guys are going off to the coast and they're sort of starting the ship up, that's when you hear gunfire on the wind.
No, yeah, so Act 1 is in the thing, convincing him to go, leaving, getting to the ship, and the army or whoever it is we don't know.
We just that's even better if you just don't know.
It's just gunfire, people screaming,
scary,
seeing the edges of flamethrowers going off. They get onto the ferry. It's a big is it going to start? They're coming. We see someone shooting, clearing out, making their way. The ferry gets off.
At sea,
the guy's like, the channel is not clear, like, because he's stressed, and they're like just taking. He's like,
I imagine, like, we need to research this, but I imagine that, like, obviously, I don't think that is it going to be engine room stuff and at the top. So like I imagine that the guy is like knows one bit.
Yeah.
And so he's having to rely on other people.
Yeah, so they're separated on the ferry, each doing a different job, trying to get this thing moving.
Maybe they can kind of hit something out there and
then it's cargo, and then on the cargo, wherever it is, one of them's got infected on. It hits a part of the ship where they've had to split up so they can all operate it, gets that person, instantly turns, and what you get is this kind of slow... The boyfriend, the sister, and the thing are in the top with this guy giving orders and going around the ship. The survivors are dotted all over the place.
That could be cool, actually. So look, when like their boat's going along, and it kind of ends up colliding with this container thing.
Yeah.
And so, like one container sort of plops onto the deck of their thing,
Yeah.
and another bunch spill off as this thing starts listing, and it's kind of like chucking bits over the side and that.
Yeah.
The one which lands on it has got infected in it. And when it's sort of smashed on the side, a couple got out, and the rest of it sort of lazily plops into the water.
Yeah.
So now they're kind of like close enough, and it sort of stacks it into the pile of boats and all this sort of thing. And so you've got that explains why these cargoes of them are knocking around. The who's, whys, or maybes, who knows?
Yeah.
Whatever, it's a device. So they get in there, and now they're like kind of running through fucked up boats and stuff and all this sort of thing. And that's when we meet the UK, skyrocket there. That's when we meet the UK lot, right? What are you writing?
Keep going.
So we get to the coast with all the boaty McBoat faces.
Yep. They make their way through the different ships. They land Brighton, let's say, wherever it is, because it's way off course, because obviously shit's gone wrong. They make their way across. There's a warring faction between these two, so it's them going through the streets with two different communes fighting. They get to the port. We can have a couple of the other ones taken out. Perhaps this is where the boyfriend dies.
Yeah, maybe we can maybe we go along the coast a bit further. So if it is like Brighton, if they end up having to get to Portsmouth or something, because Portsmouth's right over from Isle of Wight.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe they land in Brighton. They've got or the edges. They've got to go through Brighton. They're very reluctant, obviously, a little traumatized, to go into the city. So they're like, we'll stick to the coast, because if worse comes to the worst, we know we can head out to the sea. They make their way through Brighton. Two warring factions,
and we've got infected now, knocking around with the cargo ships.
There's boyfriend dies. Just her and the brother survive. They get onto a ship. One of the people go after them. They get lost, or you hear the infected are in the... You could have a whole bit with the infected in the water, perhaps, like... So as they're driving the boats late at night, they're trying not to make noise. The other boat follows them, and an infected take over their boat. They make it. Everything's all good.
We know that.
This.
Yep.
Brother and all this, they're in a quarantine section, because I've never got in zombie films where they're like, oh, you're alive, let's come straight in. So if you can imagine this is the commune, this is the protection, they're here, like separate to this, but being promised that once the tests all come back, they're all fine.
Right. Yep.
They're nervous about him, because they're like, you're a rarity and all this, but it's fine. Give him the drugs, turns out he's killed. She goes mental, she's left there, she escapes. She then finds that the scientists are trying to still find the cure, and when they're done, they are putting the zombies into containers and sending the ships up. And so all of this shit has been because of them. She sees it, she takes over the boat, but before she goes, rather than drop the container at sea, because they think that the containers are heavy enough that they'll just fall to the bottom of the sea. They don't want to gas them and burn them. They're so terrified infection will go. So what can we do? We'll seal them up a container, we'll drop them to the bottom of the sea. And so as she's got this ship that's going off to do it and takes over it, in the container, she just drops it on the land, the top opens, and these ones that they've been working on spill out, take on the commune.
That's lovely.
And she goes off.
That's lovely. It's very, very nice. Okay, look, I think we've got 15 minutes.
So this,
I think this is done.
Agreed.
I think this is quite good. I think we need to kind of put some meat on the bone here, right?
Agreed. So even if you just had it as they get into Brighton at one point, and if you can imagine, like, this is the strip, and you get that some callbacks to, because the 28 days, 28 weeks has like big parts of London, famous parts of London. Yeah. So you could have it as they're on Brighton Pier. You know, like they've stayed really close to the fucking
Yeah.
sea, and they see the pier and they're just like, let's go. All the candy and chocolate's still there, it doesn't really expire. So they're eating that, they're playing some of the arcade games, they're having fun and all of this kind of stuff. And as they're doing it, they see in the distance some shit kicking off. So they're like, let's fucking get out of here, staying basically on the stone beaches. And we see at this point 2 factions fighting, and they're like, shit.
Maybe what we do is if Europe's got guns and in the UK it's like hand-to-hand combat.
100%. It is absolutely brutal. Yeah. So it's just like we talked about it ages ago, this idea of like swords, weapons, all this kind of stuff. It's just hand-to-hand stuff. And they realise that in the city of Brighton, let's say, or in this, they're forced to go in. I don't know, let's say that they see the pier, they're hanging out, and then they realise that people have come to the pier. Like, they've heard the noise, they're investigating it. They've got axes and swords and knives and all kinds of shit. And they run from them. They're like, Brighton is pretty easy, so they're kind of forced to go into the city. So as they're going through the Brighton city, trying to get to Portsmouth, and with these kind of small faction... There's another one come in.
But that's what you do to light a fire under the arse, to make it so it's not such a kind of like, these guys are just always at war. If we have a container moment happen on the beach, and that's kind of forcing them to move. And so we had the colliding with the container boat, that sort of stuff, which made it happen. There was infected on their boat, and they've had to deal with that stuff. They've lose some people, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
When they get here, sort of smash into all the other, like they've just beached the boat and there's like other sort of stuff knocking around. They're getting off, but they're seeing like other cargo containers up and like emptied out and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so now there's infected in here, so they can kind of start to work their way through Brighton. But that's the fire which is pushing them along. They're not like, oh, we're in the UK, because this was the escape plan. They should be like,
yeah.
So now they got here though, and they're like, fuck, there's infected here, we're having to move. And that's the fire under the arse, and that's the thing which kind of gets the warring parties at each other.
Exactly, which they get caught in the middle of.
Because the infection has started to spread again, because it's kind of, as they're fighting, there's kind of...
100%, yeah.
Unravelling. I like the idea of that fight happening like somewhere... well known and remarkable. So maybe in Brighton it's that the big pavilion thing, or
nice.
You know, or actually the pier's pretty good. What if they burnt the other pier down? Because you know that one burnt down, and then the other one burns down in this.
Yeah, nice. And then they're going into Brighton, because you've got like that Taj Mahal thing in Brighton and everything else. That could be like a base camp. There are certain iconic bits in Brighton that you could definitely use.
And then like. So
then they're kind of
they're scooped up by
they're going along the coast, forced into the city, back down onto the coast into Portsmouth. In this bit here through Brighton, there's the warring faction. As they're going through, they make their way. Let's say the boyfriend's killed in this point in between it. They get through. Everything's a disaster. They make it to Portsmouth. They think they're going to be safe, and they realise that one of these factions is still following them, or like they've.
You could have like, like I don't know how well you know Portsmouth, but there's like the, what's it called? The hovercraft crossing. So like, it's on the beach and like the main bit.
Yeah, I know exactly.
And there could be signs there saying like that's where the scientists' meeting point when they first went out was.
Yeah.
And so they could be like, it's worth a go.
Yeah, nice.
And you can see the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do we get across? Well, there's got to be some boat. They could go to like the quays and find like a little boat and sort of do it stealthy, because like around that area is kind of like all the big built up sort of stuff. So maybe that's where like one of the main bad guy factions is or something.
Yeah, nice,
you got infected running around. You got them sort of sneaking the boat out, pissing down with rain.
Yeah. Or even the boyfriend survives and they're all good. And you know, as you say, Portsmouth have got those big high rises and stuff like that. You can have it as they get on the boat, it's the 3 of them. And as they're going, you know, just a nice bit of him, like he's like, we're far enough out, we need to start the motor. He starts the motor and then dead, he's just been sniped. There's just someone in one of the things looking down, and then you've got the whole seeing infected, goes to shoot and realizes he's out of bullets or something, and she's then with his dead body in the boat, lands in Isle of Wight. She's distraught. Scientists pick him up, see that someone's dead. They're panicking. They're like into quarantine. She's crying. And then it starts up with her waking up in quarantine in the same way she wakes up in that quarantine, with the same kind of knock on the door. She's back where she started. Everyone's dead. It's just her and her brother. And maybe it's like, I know these were like detention things, but if you just imagined it like her in a very dingy room, not much going on. And then when she wakes up here, it's the same kind of room. Yeah. Almost like the shitty, it was all a dream, and then it opens, it's scientists, and she's just in another isolation pod.
Can, like, to kind of help with that like in there it's the writing's in French and stuff, and in there it's in English, but it's only for like second or third watch you'd pick up on that sort of thing.
Exactly. And then obviously brother's injected. I love the idea of the injection.
But then this is the lovely, that's the tale.
Gets out, sees that they're the ones that have been dropping the containers. They're still experimenting.
Yeah, so I think like containers so like the container them up, and then just either, because they would know that containers float, but like, so if they stick them on boats and just piss them off out into the sea, and that's the thing which they hit. So if there's Isle of Wight's like that, there's the bottom of the UK, and the France is like this, and this is the crossing. So like if they're just pissing them off here, but they're sort of getting washed up this way. And that's where they sort of bumped into it.
Exactly, and then
they don't realise that round here is actually fucking shitload of ships and just sea crap, which is just
exactly. So it's just basically like hitting almost like a wall. Like all it, you imagine like when the Panama Canal blocked. Would you remember when that one thing went? If you've got enough chaos going on here, they're sending it off, being like, heads up to the North Sea where it's cold and they'll die out. It's the easiest human way.
It only takes 5 weeks for them to kick the bucket.
Exactly,
so
and it's done.
Where are they getting the bodies from to do this? Where are they getting the people from? How can we get? Maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's like maybe that's what it is. Is that like this is more the control and failure to control? So to make sense of like that sniper from the gun from the Keys, right?
Yeah.
That like maybe this is military held, and they are sending stuff
to the Isle of
Wight. They're scooping people up, sending them off.
And that's why the faction wars happened, because their people are disappearing and they're blaming each other, when it's actually the military are coming in and taking people,
snatching people up
so that they can keep the experiments going. They're like, we need to infect people to cure it. And this warring faction is because for whatever reason these two sides of, let's call it Brighton for argument, are blaming each other. Like, our people are disappearing, it's you. And they're like, our people are disappearing, it's you.
On the island, they'd never let on that they're with these guys.
No. Or they don't know like what's happening. They think mainland Britain is still infected. They're like, that there's still fresh pockets, it doesn't take much. The military are keeping them in the dark, and they're sending these containers off, which they think the military are sending, but they're not. They're just letting them wash up.
I think these guys are ultimately shit.
Yes, that's 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Because it's like,
So you can have, just to making this sort of cinematic, we can have like the bang of the sound of, I'm going to step back here, the kind of like corrugated, I was hoping it'd be metal sounding.
That's not right either.
Yeah, that dun dun, you know what I mean? Like the big boom boom at the beginning. Guys like, check this out. They're looking, there's that one lone survivor coming, like everything okay, like Jesus, like he might be infected, they're terrified, they don't know him. And then we see the people coming in, massacre. Then in this one, starts dun 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 on the metal door kind of thing, and she opens it up and she's like, we still haven't heard anything, and she's like, it's been days and everything else. There's a banging outside, it's the boyfriend and a couple of people that have gotten away, shit is coming, we need to go. Like, they trust, they don't, they leave, we see the things, but you get that same boom boom boom.
Yeah. That's the through of this is
like every time the door knocks, it's always shit news.
Yes, great. And like,
lastly...
Yep, sorry, I just kicked my wire.
Because I feel now each of these acts are done, right?
Making sure everything's recording. It is. Yeah.
We've still got 5 minutes. So We know we've got the three main protagonists, right? So we've got the boyfriend and the brother and sister. We know that the boyfriend is going to die here, that the brother is going to die here, and then it's left ambiguous about her there. How many...
Boaty McBoatface, man.
Yeah, so this is what I'm going to say. How many people leave in here, and where do they die?
With you. So we need Boaty McBoatface, man, in that.
Yep, so those are the main three.
Boaty McBoatface.
Yep.
Then you got...
should we say like a young couple?
Yeah, it's always good. Some tough dude.
Yeah, some tough guy that's had enough. Yep, nice. The mum on her own that doesn't speak much English and they're trying to help.
That's pretty good because then, like, let's say if the tough dude is maybe like from Eastern Europe or is like, you know, some like real, once again, language barrier stuff going on.
Yeah.
These could be like a nice French couple, say tough, kind of like Eastern European, maybe Ukrainian, maybe he's been fighting wars forever, you know.
Yeah. He's just tough. He knows what he's doing.
Lone mum, French, and we say like it's that language barrier which I think is kind of good and it's broken.
Yes, I agree. I really like that. So then in here in the channel crossing, let's say, so how many have we got? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Should we take out 3 at the channel crossing, and then we can take out, let's say,
the boyfriend gets
so that's the original 3. So these ones in blue are 1, 2, and question mark. These other 3 out of, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So that's the couple, the tough guy, the Russian, and then the boat person. So boat person is dead. Let's say the old lady and the nice couple die. So 4 of them.
It's always more brutal if you let one of the couple live.
Nice, so yes, true. And so then what we have here is in this bit here, you've got the couple that's left that kind of like doesn't give a shit, and then the Russian Ukrainian guy that goes down fighting.
Yeah, he can fight like crazy.
Exactly, and he takes out, you know, he's the distraction and fights like that. And then we have that. So we have our core of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from here that whittles down to 1 by the end of it. And it seems nicely kind of paced because we get to know them in Act 1 and they start dropping like flies.
Something which we've got 3 minutes, something which we haven't got is our Watson to kind of make sense of it all, to be the person which she's sounding off against. I suppose you've kind of got that in naturally by just people arguing and talking with each other.
You do, and also this idea of like really what's kicking it off is the boyfriend is coming to tell her like this shit is going down, like people are clearing houses, like cleaning out places.
Technically he is.
Yeah,
actually.
so he's doing that. You've got the ferryman that explains about the channel blocks so easily.
Rather than one person to kind of like be the, you know, the kind of the guide.
So the boyfriend's the one that explains this bit, the channel crossing and why these zombies are there.
Sort of like handing the flames on.
Is the ferry guy doing this?
We should scoop somebody up here, actually.
So I was going to say, so the Russian guy could just be the guy that's like explaining it. He's just like, you know, they're like, what's going on? And he's like, I've seen it for years. He's like, you put people under enough pressure and eventually they'll just fight each other.
Yeah, maybe what's going on in Brighton, right?
Yeah, Brighton.
So this is Brighton here. This is the coast. This is them sort of like having to move off the coast to get around Brighton. What if that, like, the reason why they have to get off the coast is because they've seen containers starting to wash up. And they're like, that's not good. We need to get into the town.
Yeah.
And in the town, he's just like, this is he sort of sees the fighting happening and that, and he's like, this is what you do is if you get people stuck in somewhere, it's like the Battle of the Bulge, you know, it's like they're just kind of stuck in like an area, then
he's like eventually he's like, when you've got more people than resources, you know, like very broken kind of that Eastern European.
When they bail out, it's like, I think we're going to struggle to get out of here. Something's going on. And when they get to the other side, the reason why they know something's going on is because the army are kind of effectively pinching this side. Yeah. Keeping them in.
Yeah. And so they're being battled back. And then, so we have boat guy, old lady, and one of the couple dying. Then we've got the other couple and the Russian guy die in Brighton. Boyfriend dies on the thing, down to the last 2. Brother is euthanized. And then she at the end, realizing that these containers, all this kind of stuff. I don't think you need to tie it in with this. This can literally just be people fighting for resources. But
Well, that's what's cool, is that like you never know.
No, but you could tie it in a little bit with this idea, I guess, that the reason why people are still fighting is because people are disappearing, shit's going, and the reason why that is because the military is still not being...
Failure to control.
Exactly. And so the reason why all of this is still happening is because of the military and the scientists.
Well, we got 20 seconds, and I've got to say, this is probably the ugliest diagram on this ever, but I think we'll be able to kind of present it effectively.
Yeah, I think we need to perhaps maybe wipe some stuff off and go.
It can be fine.
But I like it. It feels very much in keeping with 28 days.
Yeah, I mean, and like it doesn't... There you go. That is time up. How do you stop it? Dismiss. Yeah, it's brutal. It's yeah, it's 28. All right.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, should we get on and present this crazy
100%.
thing?
Let's do it. Well done. Good job.
Good. Yep.
Nice.
So if we take these up, and I'll move the board over. Can you grab your dudes?
Yep. Are we cutting there?
No, I'm gonna pick this up. I'm gonna walk over there, and then by the magic of editing, we're gonna be at the wall.
Cool.
So I'll pick this thing up. I'm gonna walk off.
Nice. I'll get out of your way.
Shot this way, and we'll cut. This is so natural.
Right. So the board is particularly a mess.
Yes.
But we understand. So 28 months later.
Go on. No.
Okay.
I think you. I suspect you got a better grip of it than I have.
Okay.
So we start off with Act 0.1 for sure.
We have a bunch of people surviving in one of those refugee holding cell areas in France. A guy starts to approach. They don't know what to do. Do we shoot him? Do we not shoot him? What are we going to do? He gets through. He warns them that stuff is going down. People are coming. We then see in the distance people arriving. They take the clear house.
Scary, nasty, violent, horrible.
Guy manages to escape. We then begin Act 1. We are with the original brother and sister, now older. Yeah, we are with the original brother and sister from 28 weeks that are now older. They're complaining they still haven't heard anything from any of the communes. Everything's gone radio silence. They don't know what to do. There is a bang on the door. It is the guy. She realizes it's the sort of boyfriend, the person she's developed a relationship with. He warns what's happening. The group are split. And in the end, we get to go with the brother and sister, the boyfriend that arrived. We get a lovely older lady of maybe, I don't know, Spanish descent or something. We get a couple, and we get an engineer who is fiddly, very nervous, and some very hard, grizzled Eastern European dude. They then make their way down to the ferry area. At this point, we then hear the gunfighting going off, and they realise they made the right call. There's a bit of sadness as the people they spent the last 2 years with are blatantly going to be dead. You want to take it from here?
Yeah. So that's pretty much Act 1, isn't it? Because then we get to the Boaty McBoatface scene where they sort of take a big kind of ferry thing of some sort, and the guy manages to get the thing fired up, and they start going off out to sea, and the sea's not kind. There's like some rolling. It's pretty 100%. Listing around the place.
It's also worth mentioning that this group have had to split up to different parts of the ship because it obviously takes a crew to run it, so they've been forced to separate around the ferry.
And so in this, and like the language barriers are through with all this, so as they're sort of struggling to kind of get control of this boat, there's another boat out there with like containers on it, and they kind of crash into each other.
Yep.
And that's when one of these containers a bunch of them sort of slide off, and one of them bangs and sort of lazily hits the deck of our team's boat, and it opens up and there's infected in it, which start to run around.
Yep.
Some other ones plop off the side of this thing, and it's like, so now the boat's kind of like listing, it's all dangerous, there's infected on the boat. And I can't remember who buys the farm on the boat.
So we lose the nice older lady,
Yep.
and we lose the engineer that worked on the boat, and we lose one of the couple.
And so this is now like the boat's kind of like effectively at full power, and it stacks it into the coast of the UK,
Yeah.
So
which we kind of got down here.
yeah, so we land just sort of outskirts of Brighton, we say.
Yeah, sort of outside of Brighton. We have the brother, the sister, the boyfriend, one of the couple, and the hard nut Eastern European. And then in Brighton,
and the coast has got like lots of other stacked up ships and kind of noisy stuff around the place, right?
Yeah.
So sorry, Mike. So we get into this bit.
We get them wandering around Brighton, sticking to the coast because they're terrified of going too far into mainland. And they go to the pier. We have a nice little moment where they do a combination of indulging in the pier, but then also reflecting on the people they've lost. At which point they hear smacking into the pier. They realise containers are starting to wash up. They know what that means. They head into mainland on the terrifying idea that one of these containers might burst open.
Yeah, so they start to go through Brighton, and the containers are bursting open, so stuff's coming out, but there's also now, like, the main threat is this infighting between these factions in there, right?
100%. And our Ukrainian guy explains that it makes sense that anyone that's left alive would be fighting, that there would always be infighting. At this point, we lose one of the other couples.
Yep. And we got, like, this idea that on the outskirts of Portsmouth, well, not this geography of it needs to be lined up, but basically there's, like, a wall of military kind of defence going on the other side, which is kind of like part of the thing to keep these people boxed in.
Exactly.
Which obviously our people didn't know about when they washed up.
Yep. We then have a nice moment where at this kind of wall bit, our Eastern European guy, for whatever reason, takes stand and the others go. So we have the boyfriend, the brother, the sister left. The Ukrainian guy goes down fighting.
And so we're in Portsmouth at the quays, and that's kind of like being properly taken over by the military there. And so,
which is still kind of deserted. Like there's not like an active running thing. No. It just looks like, but it doesn't look as destroyed as everything else. Like this could have happened hours ago or days ago.
And so there, they are under cover of darkness, and like they kind of start to escape. I don't know whether I'm not a nautical man, but like undo the boat and start to kind of like push it off under their, like quietly, stealthily under their steam. And that's when he gets taken out by a sniper from one like the main kind of skyscraper bits.
And we realise there is still somewhat of a military presence, although it wasn't obvious.
And some other infected are now beginning to spread through, and so the sniper's now occupied kind of
taking out what's left.
They go over to the Isle of Wight, where they've kind of got wind that like there's expression from 28 Days Later of salvation is there, but like there's a working kind of like scientific lab going on.
Which they discover whilst they're in this walk between Brighton and Portsmouth. They discover about this possible science sanctuary.
The military here have been kind of like seem to be sort of doing something with them, and it's kind of like there's pointers pointing towards that.
Exactly.
So we get to the Isle of Wight, and when they arrive there,
I had it more than the idea of that they kind of crash into the island. They've lost control. This is all very stormy, very horrible. Nighttime and everything else. They awaken in the same bunker they woke up in at the start. We then realise that there must be these little pods, or all these detention centres are being built, very, very similar. And the scientists explain that they've made it. They need to quarantine them for a while to make sure they're safe, but that they're safe here. They're all good. They're all happy.
Everything's great.
And then shortly after that, they are given inoculations. The brother goes first. He doesn't react, won't wake up. She's knocked out. She wakes up again, and she realises that they euthanized her brother because he carried the infection. She's livid and angry. They say that they're waiting. They're doing tests on her, but they're not going to let her into the commune anytime soon.
She escapes.
She escapes by taking one of them out and makes her way to the coast, where she discovers that the scientists have been putting infected into containers and taking them out to sea to drop them.
Because they're still trying to find a cure for this thing.
Exactly. At that point, she then overpowers the guard, takes him out maliciously.
Yeah, I think throughout all of this, there's always been the eye
gouging, so she can do that to the scientist. The idea being that throughout all of this, she's been a bit of a mess and not actually been that violent, been cowering and scared. By this point in Act 3, she's just angry and violent, ironically full of rage.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so she kills this scientist, and as she gets in the boat to drop off, she kind of hovers. There's clearly a moment where she thinks about it, and very self-consciously opens up the container, drops it, and the infected run out as if to then overtake the facility. She then takes off in the boat, completely stone-faced, as we then see the facility overrun and being destroyed. and it ends with, I guess, the sound of a radio. Is anyone out there? Or maybe an oil rig or something to suggest that she has survived, but kind of hinting like they did in the other two.
Because like 28, what do you go?
Years.
Like,
yes, perhaps not like, yeah. But the idea being is that she's alive in a ship, but it's kind of like, we have no idea.
Maybe what you do is you go back to 28, you start running the clock backwards, you do 28 weeks, or otherwise you go 28 hours or 28 minutes
so
later.
The very first part of infection when it hit London would be where you would take it. But ideally, that would be our 3-act structure for 28 months later.
Very good. Well, I think it's probably one of the tighter ones, actually.
100%. There is something nice with these kind of zombie films where there is a bit of a kind of structure that you follow. So I feel like this helped. The fact that because of the way the other films went, it kind of gave us a natural starting point. We weren't like, where are we going to go? So did feel like maybe a little bit of low-hanging fruit, but I'm really happy with what we've done here.
It's ideal for Halloween.
Exactly.
Well, seems as this is done, we should be moving on to next month. What's your thoughts for then?
So this one was maybe a little easier, so let's go with something a little harder. I think we tackle Avatar next.
So yeah, if you want to see how the hell two idiots in a garage would handle moving the Avatar franchise forward.
One of the most expensive film franchise ever.
Yeah.
Can we do it with a whiteboard and a pen?
Well, until then, thank you very much. See you guys around. And thank you very much. See you around.
Yep.
Play the music.
Whee! I was going to grab your head and be like, ah!